Hey there, welcome to this lecture. Today in this lecture, we'll be going to discuss about monolithic versus microservice. What are the key difference? And while it comes to deployment, then how carefully we need to think about the two different approaches, right? So maybe some of you already aware about how monolithic works or maybe microservices works, but still, and let's try to take a kind of step back and try to understand how monolithic works in the real life while it comes to serve the purpose to the clients, right? Or the similar way how microservice is performing while it comes to deploy in the production environment. So a very simple term you can see, like, while it comes to monolithic, it's a kind of a single unit of application where we are putting all of the features together. And while it comes to deploy or maybe serve to the client, then we're keeping whole application in one single unit, right? So that means, like, while it comes to deployment, then we are going to deploy the whole project together, right? So we cannot split the whole project to a different unit. Let's say we have some portion of the application that is maybe you are working on right now. Maybe other person also, maybe you need to get it done, or maybe there's some kind of dependencies. Then you cannot do it until you are covering all of the whole application logic together. Then you can only deploy, then only it can be served the purpose. While it comes to monolithic, then you can say a single unified code base where all of the components as a form of UI, business logic, data access layer, and all of the whole part of the application tied up together, right? And while we're going to deploy the whole application, then entire application has to be deployed together in one single unit, right? So any changes going to be needed for that particular application, you need to deploy the whole application. As a format, we can see in this diagram, while we are having a very simple application. I'm just giving some example. So a online store application where customer can just browse the product, create the cart, and maybe they can just make the payment and place the order. So this is very simple, right? So while it comes to building this whole application, you can see, we can have two types of user. User maybe can be seller or maybe can be buyer, right? And they are going to access the certain part of the application based on their rule and etc. But can you see, everything is tied up together one after another: sign up, login, verify, profile, card, and creating product categories and transaction, everything tied up together. So how these things going to work in real life, right? So while it's going to deploy the whole thing to the production environment, as an example, if we are working on the cart, right? Then until we are completing the whole cart functionality, we cannot deploy this stuff. We can deploy, but cart module not gonna work, right? So this is the thing. Once we have the changes, any of the component, if we need to have the change, entire application we need to deploy. So that is the thing exactly happening with the monolithic application, right? So monolithic application is really very sweet, and maybe a few years back, if you can take a look, it is really kind of hot architecture where people are deploying everything together, there are no any kind of outside dependencies, right? So one single unit of the application performing everything. But it is getting pain while we try to scale the application. So as an example, your application is serving around the world in many countries. Then your whole application, you need to just you cannot scale the whole application to a different countries. Let's say some countries need it multiple, it's need to handle multiple traffic, right? So maybe huge numbers of traffic. Then you cannot create a multiple copy of that particular thing. Even you can create the multiple copy, but can you see everything you need to replicate, all of the components. So that is exactly sometimes it's drawback of the monolithic. But while we are thinking about the microservice also, we need to take into consideration when to choose the microservice architecture or when to go with the monolithic. So long story short, the monolithic architecture is really cool architecture where you need to serve the purpose within a kind of small group of people, or maybe if your team is very small, or maybe if you're working with a kind of startup, or maybe your startup idea, you need to just iterate through prototype that go with the monolithic. So microservice has a lot of extra configurations, and lot of extra expert is going to be needed in this case. Now you got right. So what monolithic it is, and how monolithic is working together, all of the components. And while it comes to deployment, then we need to deploy all of the components together in one single unit, right? So it can become large while we are adding more functionality, That is the drawback of the monolithic, right? And while it comes to deploy the application, the CI/CD pipeline is very simple. We will do it, definitely we will do it some hands-on right there, so you can differentiate, you can understand like what are the pain we are going to solve right there in monolithic and microservice. So now let's go to the microservice section. So while it comes to this particular application, break it down to the microservice. As you can see right now, we are deconstructing to 3 different units. One is called user. You can see like we have sort of users, right? User can be seller, buyer. That's perfectly fine. So this particular user unit only going to handle the user related features only. They are not bordering at all like product related features. We have segregate the transaction also. It's a kind of different service. So you can see right now we have 3 services: one user, product, and transaction. So why 3 services are needed, right? So if you see here, while we are dealing with this monolithic application, then definitely the browsing product will be going to be most used feature in the whole application, right? While we're dealing with the product, because customer will come to the platform and they are going to browse the product first. Then later stage they will create the profile, login, or maybe they can create the card and etc. So which means if we're going to deploy this monolithic application, then what is going to happen? Because we need many copies, or maybe we need like multiple copies of our multiple our product. That particular product feature has to handle, like it has to be capable for handling multiple traffics or maybe huge numbers of traffic. Even it doesn't matter what the peak time, it should supposed to be automatically get scaled up and scaled down, right? This is what it's quite impossible right here in the monolithic way, right? And this is what exactly the microservice is getting solved. Like we can create as many as copy of these products, right? So we can have a product instance 1, 2, 3, 4, based on like maybe some of the country can have a multiple copies of that product instance. So it can distribute the load between among all of the instances, right? Definitely the source of truth will be one, but still like you can see like application logic can be instances can be different, right? So this is how it is reducing the application logic. So application will be always perform in the same speed, the same way, same latency we can achieve, right? So this is what exactly the microservice is getting solved with all of the problem. So now you can see in this monolithic way, all of the modules are sitting each other like on the top of each other, or maybe in a sequential way, like sign up, login, and verify, or something like that way. So while it comes to resolving the dependencies, so while we need some informations for the card, then what card the feature will going to do? Card feature will directly access the user profile, the function, right? Internally, it can be directly access to the user profile information from the card, right? Then it can give the data back, right? So now you can see here, this is not the case in the right here, right? So while it comes to create any kind of like the order or something like that, then any of the, let's say between the services, let's say we are creating a kind of order or maybe transaction, right? Then transaction service need to talk with the user service, again need to talk with the product service, right? So how we can resolve the problems, like all of the communications? So those communication, it can be handled 2 ways. One going to be asynchronous and another going to be like synchronous way. So while we are going to use the synchronous, then definitely we need to take care about like provisioning all of the infrastructure accordingly, so your service can be handled the synchronous and asynchronous communication. So that's where the deployment is coming to the play. Like we need to choose the certain infrastructure carefully based on your team expert. Is like if they know about a bit more message broker stuff, then maybe you can go with the Kafka or maybe RabbitMQ or maybe Nets, or maybe if your team is like maybe little bit like AWS side, let's say they know in AWS, like they are quite knowledgeable on the AWS, then go to the AWS stuff of just to handling all of this kind of like message broker stuff with the help of SNS and SQS, right? So it's completely up to you, but definitely while it comes to the microservice, then we need expertise. So if you have a bigger team and if you have expertise, if you have a proper experience on how microservice works, and then you can go with this microservice architecture, right? But while we are going to deploy the microservice, then certainly we need to think about those communications, like while our modules or our functions are accessing certain data from the certain service, at a time you need to think about like how we are resolving all of these communications. As you can see, these are weak connections, right? So as a from-up, while client will become to the application, then they're going to land it with this product service, right? So if we have our product service, if we product service are having multiple instances, right? So where it can be like handle multiple instances or maybe traffic all of this way. It doesn't matter which country we are accessing, but still we have the deprovision, then we can auto scale this stuff. Then user service, while it comes to create any kind of payment or transaction or something, then it is going to notify to the transaction service. Then transaction service will get the job done by placing the order, deducting the stock, and etc. Then it is going to be notified to the notification service. So I'm considering this is not notification service. Maybe it can be a kind of like message broker, you can say, right? So in this case, our message broker will be take care of all of the communications between the services, and it is going to publish all of the messages in asynchronously, right? Then our other service is going to be consumed from all of these things from there, right? So this is the way you will be not going to be ended up with deploying your application some sort of distributed monolith. So a lot of people like saying like, hey, you are really building good microservice, but ended up with distributed monolithic. So what is distributed monolithic exactly? So if you see this here, this application, right, this whole module, we have multiple features, but all of the features are having dependencies, right? This is what exactly we are missing, right? So even if we are writing some code in the monolithic way also, still we can write our code in modular way to reducing the dependencies with the help of like, following the solid principle or writing clean codes, right? So you can just like inject your dependency, right, through the initialization, not directly accessing something or importing something on the top. This is what exactly we have. There are plenty of the tutorials we have in our platform, in our YouTube channel also. So where you can see like how we can achieve all of these things, even if you're writing the monolithic the code also, right? So which is maybe there are a lot of authors there. They're not exposing these things in correct way, so that's why people are falling into trouble. But keep those things aside. So right now you can see, while it comes to distributed monolithic, then definitely like while we have the communications, right? Can you see like product and user can have a communication, and user transaction can have communications. Then transaction and product can have communications to deduct the stock and all, right? So while you are keeping the you can say a strong connection or synchronous connection, then your service will be completely dependent to other service. This is what exactly lies to refer to a kind of distributed monolithic. That means your user service cannot kickstart or user service cannot serve the purpose unless it is like resolving the dependencies from the transaction. This is what we don't want, right? So this is what exactly it's referred as a form of distributed monolithic. That means like user service has a strong connection between the transaction service, right? So instead of by resolving those things, like always to try to keep asynchronous communications. Even if you don't have data right now from the transaction service, perfectly fine. Just let notify to the user, hey user, we are trying to communicate with the transaction, right, transaction service, but still waiting for our data, right? When the data will arrive, we will let you know your order has been placed, right? So maybe you can use some kind of long pooling, or maybe you can use some kind of the wait queue, or you can use some kind of socket connections, just like moreover, there are many examples I have in our YouTube channels, or maybe you can go with our learning portal also to check it out, this kind of courses or maybe videos in our free courses section, right? So now you know, right, how we can resolve all of these things to not to end up with distributed monolithic. So you might have thinking like this whole course is about the deployment, but why Jay is explaining about like monolithic versus microservice? Yes, true. Though it is this whole course is for deployment or maybe scaling about, all right, but you need to understand like how you are going to resolve all of these things while it comes to deployment of a kind of monolithic application, right? Then how you are going to prepare yourself, right? And while it comes to the microservice, then how you going to prepare yourself? Then what are the things maybe you need to take into considerations? As an example, SNS or SQS, right? And maybe message brokers, Kafka setup, all right, or maybe a net setup, all right, so or maybe go with RabbitMQ, or maybe a kind of inbuilt solution, right? So those things, those are the knowledge exactly it's going to be needed, right? So this is what exactly very simple example right now I'm gonna give you. While user is going to create the card, right? it can like get the card items. Those card item data we are going to pull from the product, right? So if while they're going to create the card, then we're going to pull the data from the product, and if we see like all of the card items are having out of stock, then we are going to say, hey, if we cannot place the order, because right now, can you see this is not distributed monolithic at all, right? So this is something like which we need the updated stock data, right? So while our card, we are going to create the card, then card items needed the existing stock item from the product. So we can check it out live inventory right there. If live inventory call got failed right there, then we're going to say, hey, oops, we cannot create the card because we don't have the inventory data. Until if we are not getting the inventory data, then we'll be going to end up with some products, like ordering some product which is completely out of stock, and we don't know like when this product will come back to the stock again, right? So this is what exactly a lot of scenarios maybe we need to make it. But you can say like in this case, we cannot say this is kind of like distributed monolithic until we are just like waiting for, or maybe we are having some kind of RESTful API call. We have some timeout, right? Like keeping some kind of seconds, right? Maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, or whatever the times we are going to set it right there. Until the time we will wait. If our product service is down, then we're gonna say, hey, we cannot place the order right now, but we don't have dependencies, right? We just try to call, get the data, get the stock. No, it's not working. Perfect. So now the similar way, you can see the create order. We are just like simply, once we are creating the order, we have the stock items right there. We saw like that, those items, we have approximately 10, 20, 30, whatever the stocks right there. We have placed the order, then publishing the event to the message queue. Then our transaction service will going to pick it up from the, while a user will make the payment, then transaction service will notify to the message queue, hey, you have placed the order, we have received the money, now this is the time, go ahead and deduct the stock. So this communication is going to happen from here, right? Something like this way. And again, this one going to be like asynchronous. So now how we are resolving all of these things while it comes to the message broker, right? Perfect. So now while we are going to deploy our microservice, then certainly we need to take care about the message broker connections and make sure like you are exposing all of these things, provisioning your infrastructure to reaching out your service by some sort of protected routes, or maybe internal communications, or with the help of API gateway. All of these things you need to consider. So now you know better, microservice, monolithic versus microservice, and what are the key differences, right? So microservice, as a theory, you can say a collection of the small independent service. Each service are handling certain business logic. As an example, this one we can take a kind of classic example. User is handling user-related operations, product is product, and transaction is transaction-related operations. So while it comes to deployment, microservice is a little bit complex than monolithic, because we need to, as I said, this configuration we need to do it different way. The similar way, like something like this way, right? Then exposing all of the internal connections between the microservice with the help of API gateway, or without API gateway, then authorization also come to the picture. So that means while you are deploying your microservices, you need to have a kind of solid understanding of the authorization, right? Then authentication, and how we are going to do the scaling and etc. But in the same case, like while you are going to deploy your monolithic, there not much advanced knowledge are needed, right? So in this case, nothing to worry. So if you wish to learn about the microservice deployment, then we have a kind of advanced course in our learning platform that is called the Modern Scalable Deployment for Microservices Front and Backend. So that is, maybe you can take it up and we can learn all of this stuff right there. But in this course, we'll be going to put our focus on monolithic deployment, where we will try to finish it up everything what we have discussed so far. Setting up our front end and back end in the two different ways, and we will be going to expose everything in the production environment, so our front end and back end can talk efficiently with the help of the security protocols, right? Perfect. Then see you in the next lecture. Thank you.